And this seems like a lot. This seems like more than I can handle. If I've bitten off more than I can chew. How's it going, everybody? My name is Thomas Bresch. I'm the creator of a game called Pinstripe. I'm also working on a game called Once Upon a Coma. I love making games, but today we're going to play a game. We're going to play a game called Risk of Rain 2. Now, this game is really fun, but what makes it super fun is actually the 5 super secret fun facts we're going to talk about the creation of this game. It's going to be a really fun Let's Play. Wait, it's not called a Let's Play, is it? It's called a Devs Play. It's going to be a really fun Devs Play, so stick around. So let's go ahead and talk really quickly here about what I don't really like about the game feel, and that is how the game feels when you're pressing inputs and buttons. So the first problem is that when I shoot something, the gun sound honestly kind of sucks. And I know that this is an early access game, so it's not really a huge critique to the developer because honestly they're still working on it. But the gun sound, it's kind of a mid-range, a little bit of treble to the sound. It's kind of feels like I'm shooting an airsoft pistol. That's how small it feels. And I would recommend, even with the first gun you start out with, and I know that this is the first gun, and I know it needs to feel weak, but even still, I wish that there was more bass in the gun, more excitement to the gun, and that includes a full range of sound. Bass, mid-range, and treble. When you're on the ground and running, you want to feel like the player's actually heavy, that they have weight, and that they're making contact with the ground. And you can see they've tried to have some particle emitters at the feet right there. See those little puffs of smoke? But it's really hard to see, really subtle. And so I think they could emphasize it a little bit more, have a little bit more effects, maybe when you run through the grass particles emit out of your feet. And those are all really simple changes that can be made that can make the game feel a lot more alive. But again, guys, this is an early access game, so there's plenty of things that we could complain about. But overall, I mean, I'm really impressed, and I've had a lot of fun playing this game today. I've played for several hours. Now, something that's really crazy about Risk of Rain 2 is that it's actually, obviously, a sequel to an original Risk of Rain. And that original was a 2D game. Now, what the team decided they wanted to do was they wanted to make a 3D game. They wanted to at least test it out and see if they could get the same amount of players, the same amount of enemies, and the same amount of chaos that was in the original Risk of Rain, but in a 3D space. Now, this is a huge risk, both financially and time-wise, as a team to say, hey, we're going to actually try this out in a 3D space and see if it can work. Now, fortunately, the Risk of Rain, paid off in the long run, and that chaos, trust me, it's still there, and it's crazy and it's fun. Now, really quick before we begin our next fun fact, I want to talk about something that drives me a little bit crazy, and it's the assumption by some in the gaming community that we don't really need to dress nice. Now, I don't know about you, but I do want to look great, but I also want to feel comfy, and I want it to be easy. And that's possible with Cuts clothing. Now, this is a Cuts t-shirt, and they make premium basic Henleys and tees that really do instantly upgrade your wardrobe. Now, I am super picky about my t-shirts, so you can trust me when I say that Cuts clothing is hands down my favorite brand of t-shirts. I mean, I was the one who reached out to them for this sponsorship video. So if you guys want 15% off your first order, use the promo code ATMOS in the link in the description. There is something really important, one key thing that I've learned from the creation of this game, and that is the simple fact that everything in your game, whether it's players, enemies, creatures, robots, those things should really all funnel down to a base root class, and that is a script. Now, what's really cool about this game is that whether it's enemies or AI or players, they all can pretty much do the same things. They move the same way, and they can collect the same kind of inventory and use it in the same way, just at different variances. What this means is that they only really have 2 classes that they can expand upon, whether it's releasing DLC content or just finishing the creation of this game. It's a long-term, sustainable way to make a game. Now, if you were me 10 years ago, you would start out your game creating a player class, then you'd have an enemy class, then maybe you'd have a robot class, and then a creature class, all these different kinds of classes that are created from scratch. This is a really bad way to make a game for the long term, because if you have a successful game, if it's really successful on launch, you want to continue to release DLC content and continue to capitalize on the success of the game. That's really not possible if you've got all these random classes you're creating. Alright, I got a monster tooth. Drop a healing orb on kill. So the thing is that a lot of these items that you can collect in this game, all throughout this map, are tiny little variable shifts to your player. So they'll change how many times you can jump, they'll change how fast you can run, they'll change your health or your shield. All of these things are simple variables that are just being shifted, but they have a cool graphic associated with them, some cool little icon up at the top of the screen. So this game is really, honestly, it's an economical game to create. And they've done a lot of really good, smart decisions in this game in terms of creating items that make you feel good, that don't really cost a lot in terms of development. Now let's pretend for a second that you're Shigeru Miyamoto. And Nintendo comes in and they say, congratulations, The Legend of Zelda, the very first one, the top-down one. Congratulations, it performed amazing, but these 2D platformers are really exciting. So we're gonna try and make a 2D platformer of Legend of Zelda. You can imagine the challenge of going from a top-down game to a side-scrolling platformer game. And what ended up happening was The Legend of Zelda, The Adventure of Link came out, and it sucked. It was horrible. Everyone hated that game. It's the worst Zelda game to date by far. The reason was because, there's plenty of challenges going from a top-down game to a side-scroller. And the same can be said about the Risk of Rain original game, 2D platformer, going to a 3D game. So some of the challenges that the team mentioned was going to a 3D game meant that the camera felt slower and the player movement felt slower. Whereas in a 2D game, the camera seems to be moving faster because it's closer to the player, and there's a lot of stuff maybe moving in the foreground and in the background. But with a 3D game, you can see this huge expanse. And when you're moving through that, it can feel daunting, it can feel like you're drudging through the environment, and you can feel slow. One of the ways that the team accomplished a faster pace or a faster feel is to, one, give the player the ability to sprint, but also just move that camera closer to the ground. When the camera is closer to something in the foreground, you could see it moving. Things in the foreground move faster than in the background. Now, another challenge that was presented was in a 2D space, whatever is in that window is what's relevant. Whereas in 3D, you can see far into the distance, maybe miles into the scene, and see all of the various things that you need to do. And this can seem daunting if you just start playing the game. So I think the Risk of Rain team really did a good job of creating an environment that kind of blocks your view. So you could see that there's tons of mountains that you have to climb and various things you have to avoid. So you can't just see miles in front of you in that game. Alright, so the ultimate goal here, guys, is we need to find the teleporter so that we can engage in a boss fight. Want to make sure that we have as many items as we can, so repairing the turret here. I think we've got like 4 turrets, that's awesome. So the turrets are great because they basically just farm and get cash for you so that you can go find various capsules to unlock and get more items. So this is kind of cool. What is this here? Pray to the shrine. Nothing happened. Okay. That sucks. I don't think anything happened. What is that? Give me that. Disposable missile launcher. Fire a swarm of missiles with Q. See, that's why I love these kind of games, is they force you to be strategic and save items before using them. Especially when you're hanging out with these creepy bosses. There's going to be some pretty creepy bosses coming up, and they're really fun. Open that up. So notice how I have plenty of cash to use. Deal more damage to healthy enemies. It's a crowbar. Nice. Careful, Thomas, careful. All right, let's open this up, see what's in here. Syringe. Increase attack speed. Perfect. I have to admit, I've always wanted to make a multiplayer game. I've thought about it for a long time, but what always freaked me out was knowing that I'm not very good at the server side of things, and my players are probably going to be rightfully so pissed off about lag or getting shot around corners or whatever it is regarding the server. what's cool about Risk of Rain 2 that I learned was it's a PvE game. It's a player versus environment game. That is, you have a team of players that are online and they're fighting the environment. And that is the client side of things, what's happening locally on your machine, as opposed to fighting other people on the server. So there's a lot less complaining about lag or getting shot around corners. This is really great for you as an indie developer. If you want to make a multiplayer game, consider making a PvE game, because that means you can not really worry about the server as much and you can more focus on the client side of things. Alright guys, you think we're ready to engage in the boss fight? I think we are. Let's do it. Here we go. Are you guys ready? I'm kind of nervous. Wait, what happened? What? Where's the boss? That wasn't it. That wasn't it. Okay. Where is my effing shrine? I should have marked it. Okay, it looks like we found the teleporter. Are we ready to engage in a boss fight? I think we are. Let's do it. Okay, guys. You gotta be smart here. I'm kind of freaked out. Holy crap, there's 2 bosses. What? Beetle Queens. Okay, so remember I have that Q weapon. I can't remember what it was. But we're just gonna give this a shot and see what happens. Now we can't... Oh, come on. Guys, I'm kind of scared. I am not the best at video games. And this seems like a lot. This seems like more than I can handle. If I've bitten off more than I can chew. I don't think in any of my devs plays I've actually beaten a level before. That's how bad I am at video games. Are we gonna make it happen? Please, guys, cross your fingers for me. Come on, Thomas. Don't be a stupid person. Okay, actually, guys, look at me. Easy mode's pretty easy, which is good because it's easy mode. But looks like looks like my health isn't actually suffering that much, so maybe my panic was not warranted. Nice. Okay. Please tell me I won. Please tell me I won. What? Get it. Proceed through the teleport. Come on, Thomas. Yes. I finally beat a level in a dev's play. Are you proud of me? Because I am proud of me. I think I did a good job. This is awesome! New levels! Now, Risk of Rain 2 had a big problem, and that was the team wanted to have lighting on all of the projectiles that were coming out of the players and the creatures and the enemies, and wanted to light the scene and have dynamic lighting through the chaos of this battle. Well, that's really tough on a computer when you have all of these vertices that you have to find lighting for and calculate every single piece of geometry in the scene. So instead of using forward rendering for their lighting, and that is finding the lighting for every single vertex in the scene, they use something called deferred rendering. And what deferred rendering does is it basically just looks at the resolution of the screen and determines what needs to be lit in that resolution. Now, this is a great option. Now, the only problem is a lot of times you're not able to light transparent objects, and it also means that older computers with sort of poor graphics cards aren't able to process this kind of lighting. So deferred is probably the best option if you're gonna have a ton of lighting in the scene that's dynamic as opposed to baked. And baked meaning that it's just sort of written before the game actually starts and is sort of painted on the scene. Wow, that was fun. That was really, really fun. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Devs Play. If you want to watch more videos, please consider supporting on Patreon. In addition to a few sponsorships here and there, Patreon is really the only way I continue to make videos for my YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for your support. It always means a lot to get a ton of comments. I try and answer them as much as I can. And it also means a lot if you subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks, guys. Love you. Bye.